Okay, we will call this meeting to order, a regular council meeting for January the 8th. It's 3 p.m. And I'd like to ask Councillor Dunham to please read the land acknowledgement.
Thank you, Mayor Barclay. The town of Innisfail acknowledges that we are meeting on Treaty 7 territory, the ancestral and traditional territory of the Blackfoot Confederacy, Kainai, Piikani, and Siksika, as well as the Tsuut'ina First Nation and Stoney Nakoda First Nation. We acknowledge that this territory is home to the Métis Nation Alberta Region 3 within the historical Northwest Métis homeland. We acknowledge that the many First Nation, Métis, and Inuit have lived in and cared for these lands for generations. We are grateful for the traditional knowledge keepers and elders who are still with us today and those who have gone before us. We make this acknowledgement as an act of reconciliation and gratitude to those whose territory we reside on.
All right, thank you, Councillor Dunham. I'd also like to say Happy New Year to everyone and welcome back to Council. It's been a bit of a break. I think it's 3 weeks since we were here last, so hope everyone had an enjoyable holiday season and certainly looking forward to a great year ahead. I want to first of all also just send our deepest condolences, of course, to the families of Councillor Michael Dawes and former Councillor Frank Wong, to their families and colleagues. They were certainly two wonderful gentlemen and embodied the meaning of service, and the town of Innisfail did send flowers to the celebration of life for Councillor Daw, as well as a card to Red Deer Council. So difficult time for that to happen over Christmas. So we'll move into the agenda and item 2.1. Are there any additions or deletions? No. Could I please have someone make a motion to adopt the agenda as presented? Councillor Harrison.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Barclay. I'd so move.
Okay, thank you. All in favor? Okay, thank you. Carried. And then we'll move into 3.1, the regular council meeting minutes for December the 11th, 2023. When you're ready, please make a motion that we...
I'll move those minutes,
Okay.
Mayor Barclay.
Thank you. All in favor? Okay, carried. And then 3.2, the agenda and priorities meeting minutes for December the 18th. Please have someone make a motion. Councillor Dunham.
Mayor Barclay, I'll move those minutes.
Okay, thank you. All in favor? Okay, thank you. We'll move into 4.1 with our CEO, Todd Becker, and his report.
Thanks, Mayor Barclay. Hello, Council. Just a few items for Council's attention. The report is there for your consideration. Just wanted to highlight a letter within your correspondence, which you'll see later on in your agenda. It's a letter from the Minister of Municipal Affairs, Minister McIver, outlining the launch of the local government fiscal framework, which has taken place of the Municipal Sustainability Initiative. According to the government website and the LGFF Act, Calgary and Edmonton, there's a formula which is slightly different than the rest of Alberta municipalities, where Calgary and Edmonton funding formula will be based on population, education, tax requisitions, and kilometers of roads, whereas the rest of Alberta, which includes Innisfail, receive funding through a formula based on population of 65%, tangible capital assets 15%, amortization of tangible capital assets 10%, kilometers of local roads 10%. Within some of the wording, I've noticed that there's a reference to a top-up base funding for municipalities less than 10,000 population that have limited local assessment base, but I'm not sure. I cannot find additional information what would be considered having limited local assessment base. So this report is just preliminary. The Director of Corporate Services is going to come to you in a little bit more detail, but thought with the letter going into correspondence, you should have initial information, Council, for your consideration. The town's 2024 LGFF allocation for capital is just went over $1.1 million, increased slightly in 2025 to 1.265 or 266 million dollars in 2025. 2023 MSI capital allocation was just shy of 850,000. On the operating side, it remains the same as at 130,000. So part of this report, Council, you'll see a list of all the allocations to all the municipalities in Alberta, including Innisfail. Also, the Director of Corporate Services did provide you a graph, which we can slide to. I think Juanita, just to have a quick peek at that graph. Yes, So that shows you over the last, since 2011, the Innisfil allocations based on the capital side. Again, just a snapshot right now, and again, Director of Corporate Services will come back a little bit more detail, which will, maybe today will introduce some conversation at council and question, but if not today, certainly in the near future, with a little bit more detail.
Okay, thank you, CEO Becker, and just going through this data a little bit that Director Vickers provided, and thank you for that. It's interesting. It's about a 32% decrease in 2024 over the average for the last, from 2011 to 2023, there's been a 32% decrease. And when we add inflation to that component, so a 2.33% annualized inflation rate, it's a 43% decrease. So we should be receiving around $1.966 million, but instead we're receiving about 1.1. So just remind everybody there's a town hall coming up with Alberta Munis on January the 18th. Hopefully everybody will get registered for that. And I know Alberta Munis has put out a statement about it as well. It's a great funding formula. It's just $1 billion short. But anyway, we will talk about this going forward as well. Councillor Bates?
Yeah, the only question, I'm trying to remember, I should, but, and I'm sure we'll address it going forward. What did we budget for?
1.2.
Pardon me?
1.2. So we're about $100,000 short of the budget.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions for CEO Becker? If not, I'll please have someone make a motion that we accept his report as presented.
I'll make that motion, Mayor Barclay.
Councillor Messaros.
Sorry, go ahead. Okay. I make a motion that the CAO report dated January 8th, 2024 be accepted for information.
Councillor Wing. Okay, had 3 microphones on. All right, all in favor? Okay, carried. And then we'll move into council action control, 4.2. Any questions about this? If not, please have someone make a motion that we accept the council action control as information. Councillor Messaros.
I'll make that motion, Mayor Barclay.
Okay, thank you. Any comments? All in favor? All right, carried. And we'll move into 4.3, and I'll have Director Vickers introduce our guests.
Yes, thank you, Mayor Barclay. So BDO Canada is the company that is completing our audit, our financial audit. They are here today to discuss some planning communications and to go over some details with council and answer any questions that council may have. So we do have Mitch and Dylan up here with Stephen sitting in the back.
Great. So I'm Mitchell Kennedy. I've seen you guys a few years now. I'm the senior manager on the engagement. Steve right here is a manager on the engagement, and Dylan's the senior on the file. So what we're going to do is effectively run you guys through our audit plan for interim, and just kind of briefly explain to you one of the major changes that's happening this year, which is asset retirement obligations, and that's section 3280. But we'll talk about that more when we get to the significant risk section. Until then, I'm just going to pass it over to Dylan, and if you guys have any questions at all, please feel free to stop us and we can address that.
Great. I'll kind of work through everything here. We're just going to highlight the key issues that we think is relevant for this year's audit for the year ended December 31st, 2023. We're going to talk about some of the significant risks we've identified and the terms of the engagement, as well as our general approach to the audit. We can kind of skip over this slide. This is kind of the leaders of our team. There's Mitch there, you can see up on the screen. And then Alan Litster is the partner on the engagement, who is not in attendance today. Both have extensive industry experience and have worked with the town in the past. Go to the next slide. This is just our audit timeline. Some of these dates can move, but this is what we've anticipated. We've already performed our planning and interim field work. Today we're presenting the planning, and we anticipate to be out in March to do our final audit field work. I'm the senior on the engagement, so I'll do a lot of the boots on the ground work. I'll be out here in March for a few days. Steve will also join me, and Mitch should be there for a day or two. Then we plan to present the final planning in April and issue our audit report. Next slide. Just some of our responsibilities as auditors. We're going to work with management towards the issuance of these financial statements. We'll provide timely and constructive management letters. This will include any deficiencies and internal controls that we identify. And we'll present our findings to council, including key audit and accounting issues and any significant deficiencies and controls. Just in that gray box there, just talks about that we are required to obtain an understanding of the system of controls. This will be relevant controls. It won't be absolutely everything. We're not going to look at every control. We're going to look at what's relevant to the audit, and we'll report to you any deficiencies we find at our final report. Next slide, please. As auditors, we also have responsibilities around fraud for planning and performing the audit to obtain reasonable assurance that the financial statements are free of material misstatements, whether caused by error or fraud. We will identify and assess the risks due to fraud. We'll obtain sufficient and appropriate evidence regarding these assessed risks, and we'll respond appropriately. Next slide, please. There's a little more.
For clarity, we're not aware of any situations of fraud. It's just something that we have to disclose.
This also includes some inquiries with management, including the assessment of risk that the statements are maybe materially misstated due to fraud, management's process for identifying and responding to the risks of fraud in the town, management's communication, if any, to those charged with governance regarding its processes for identifying and responding, and management's communication, if any, to employees. Again, as Mitch noted, you can see at the bottom there, we are not currently aware of any fraud affecting the town. Next slide. These just highlight our significant risks that we've identified based on our knowledge of the town, past audits. The first one is revenue recognition. This is an inherent risk related to revenue recognition and ensuring it is recorded in the correct period. It's inherent, it's assumed, we'll see it basically in all of our audits. Our approach to this is to review your policy for consistency with the standards. We'll take a sample of grants and other revenue and agree it to source documentation and ensure that it's reported in line with the accounting standards. We'll also review the design and implementation of controls around revenue specifically. Management override of controls, again, this is a very common risk. It's typically assumed. Management is in a unique position to override or circumvent the controls in place. Our approach to this is to review manual entries using analytical procedures and vouchings to supporting documentation. We'll also review and design the implementation of controls surrounding the posting of any manual journal entries. Finally, we have the asset retirement obligation. This is a new standard this year, which Mitch mentioned at the start. The risk here is that the new standard is not adopted correctly. Our approach is to review the scoping process performed to identify the AROs. We'll compare the assets to the TCA listing to ensure that everything is identified. We'll review the process to determine the ARO and determine if it's in compliance with the standard. And we'll also recalculate the ARO and analyze the estimated liability. Next slide. Materiality. This is a concept in audit used to determine if significant misstatements affect the financial statements. Misstatements are considered to be material if they could reasonably be expected to influence the decisions of users. We've set preliminary materiality at $530,000, which is based on 2.5% of revenue. It's worth noting that this is based on preliminary results. This can change as the audit moves on. If final results are different, this materiality can move, and we'll present that final materiality when we present the audit report. We will communicate all corrected and uncorrected misstatements identified during our audit, other than those which we determine to be clearly trivial. This clearly trivial, we take 5% of the materiality, so 530,000 this year, 5% of that, approximately 26,000. Anything under that, we're not adjusting, and those will not be communicated with the corrected and uncorrected misstatements that are above triviality. Next slide, please. Finally, this just goes through our audit approach. You can see there's 6 steps to our audit approach. First, we'll complete scoping, which we've done. We complete a preliminary review, we set our materiality level, and we define the audit scope. We then move on to identify and assess our risk based on areas that we think have high risk and could have material misstatements. We design our audit process, what kind of procedures we're going to perform in the audit, and then we obtain the evidence. So we'll come out and actually perform our procedures. We'll then form an opinion and communicate. those results. I think it's a good visual here just to show that it's not really a straight line process. It's circular. We're going to move back and forth through the process. If new information comes to light at step 4, we move back, we reassess. How are we going to plan around this? Reassess our materiality and move back through. The rest of the slides are mostly marketing materials, things you guys can look through for more information, but I'm not going to go through anything unless you guys see something you want to talk about. But other than that, if you guys have any questions on what was presented, let us know, please.
Okay, thank you very much. Can you expand at all at this time on the asset retirement obligation?
Yeah, so it's kind of a mouthful, but I'll speak of it generally, and based off of that, if you guys have questions, I can elaborate more. So this standard was originally introduced and supposed to come out back in 2018. But the standard has been effectively kicked down the road several years, and then I believe COVID was the year that it was supposed to come out, and then based off of everything that was happening, they decided to prolong the standard again. So this is the first year that it's effectively being rolled out. And so a lot of the school boards have already dealt with the standard because their year end was a little bit before. But effectively what it is it's a full review of your capital asset listing. And it's supposed to identify and highlight any potential reclamation that you might have that's not currently accounted for related to those capital assets. So one of the really big ones that's being talked about is asbestos, for example. So if you have stuff like asbestos in some of your buildings, the idea is you're going to incur some kind of liability sometime down the road where you're going to have to do reclamation work to effectively remediate the property and get it restored back to its original use. So this is not to be confused with another standard, which is considered contaminated sites. So contaminated sites is an older standard, which is still going to coexist with an asset retirement obligation. There are slight variances between the two, but I'm not going to get too much into it. But the short version of this is we kind of have to go through your capital asset listing and go through the identification stage and then determine whether or not you've identified stuff and whether or not it meets the definition of a liability. And then once we determine whether or not it meets the definition of a liability, we then have to determine whether or not the cost related to that retirement is, for a lack of a better word, reasonable. And so there's quite a bit of consideration throughout the audit process to determine what that dollar value effectively is going to fall under. And it's going to be quite a bit of work between Erica and I to hammer it out this year. But the other thing that's going to impact your financial statements this year is the government is effectively recommending what is called a modified approach for this adjustment. And so what that means is it's going to be us looking back at your prior year financial statements and doing a restatement for your prior year numbers to take into consideration this liability. Every municipality has to do this. It's not special for you guys. It's just as what's required for the standard this year. So, and what that's going to impact for you guys going forward is when to identify a liability, that liability has got to be offset against your capital assets on your balance sheet. And so you're going to have annual expenses in the form of amortization and an accretion expense, which is effectively you truing up the liability every year. So you're going to have an additional line item for your income statement and a new note disclosure. And
So my question would be, how would you know about asbestos unless, are we required to test buildings or?
So yeah, this is where it gets really complicated. So on the audit side, the significant risk there is the assertion is completeness. So it's basically trying to find out how did the municipality determine that they've fully identified every possible liability related to your capital assets. And that's how we have to come in and do the testing and go, all right, how did you guys go through your TCA listing? How did you identify what was and wasn't a risk? And so It's a matter of, so what some municipalities are doing is they're engaging with their internal and external engineers to see what kind of information they have, and determine what's a risk and what's not. If you look at legislation, for example, I think federal governments were required to stop using asbestos around 2016. And then federally, for everybody, it was like 2018. But most contractors stopped using it much earlier than that. So it's kind of like a process of elimination, trying to figure out what's potentially an area of risk we need to look at versus what's not. So if you just constructed a new building, it's probably not going to be at risk because they can't use asbestos. But other things to keep in mind, it's not just buildings and asbestos. It could be anything from equipment. So one of the examples that's used in the standard is like an x-ray machine. If you have an x-ray machine, you can't just throw it away. There's a retirement related to the x-ray because of the material that it's made out of. So you quite literally have to examine everything in your TCA listing to see what's a risk and what's not. So I don't know if that,
Yeah, no.
it gets a little more detailed
Yeah,
than that.
thanks,
But
Mitch, and it sounds like could be a fairly huge task, right, when you have if you have older buildings.
it's a pretty huge
Yeah,
undertaking.
Yeah,
Yep.
for sure, yeah. Okay, well, thank you for that. And anybody else have any questions? Councillor Wing?
Yeah, just one question, actually. Thanks, Mayor Barclay, and probably through administration. Does this become then a layer of our asset management plan? Do we have actually some of this information already collected as a result of the work we've done over the last year?
Mayor Barclay through to Councillor Wing. So we've been working with our engineer, Curtis Hoffman, and we actually have a meeting on Thursday, I believe, to go over all this and discuss some of these details, because we do have some of that information specifically about our water pipes and things like that. We have a lot of, like what it's made of. When it's PVC, there's likely no asbestos in it. So we do have some. We are going to work through and get some more, but we likely may need to reach out to like a third-party engineering firm to kind of help us with this. So.
Councillor Heistad?
Yeah, quick question. Just the fees that we will be paying this year compared to last year, or is it the same fee structure? And
Yeah, so that's a fair question. This might be out of my realm of being able to discuss, but I believe there's going to be a markup of approximately $5,000 related to the work surrounding asset retirement obligations, just due to the complexity and change in the standard.
yep, and that's why I was asking. I was just curious. This
Yeah.
seems like a lot more work for everybody.
It is, but like at the same time, we understand that like you guys are going to be doing a lot of the work too, and it is what it is, I guess. Like we're going to work with Erica to the best of our ability to kind of do everything within our power to keep stuff cost sensitive, I guess. So,
Okay,
yeah.
thanks.
Yep.
CEO Becker?
Just reminds me when TCA came into the picture, and probably immediate shock, knowing the amount of work and data collection, although we're proud of where we're at from our asset management and TCA component. Are you getting the same flavor with this new principle?
Well, if you're referring to back in the day when they didn't even have TCA listings and all these municipalities had to start gathering information from scratch, I mean, if it's one thing after another, right? It's just as our accounting world evolves, they demand more information. It is a big undertaking. Every municipality that I've met with this year, everyone's struggling with it quite a bit. And obviously it's a PSAS standard, so the scope for a municipality is obviously quite larger compared to, let's say, a commission or a school board sometimes. So it's not fun. I don't know what else to add to that. It's just, we're here to help support you guys and get you past the finish line.
So Mitch, is part of the principle, like if you had a building that was, I don't know, 1970s or 60s or something, so maybe there is, maybe there isn't, and you you know, a inspection, and yes, there is, but, you know, typically if you don't disturb it, leave it alone, everything's good, or is part of this principle?
Well, the idea is
to
you have it,
abated?
you have to deal
You
with
have
it,
to, okay.
unfortunately.
Yeah.
So from an assurance standpoint, we have to look at the listing, and if you guys identify something not as a risk, we have to ask the question, well, how do you know it's not a risk? Like, how did you meet that conclusion? So among other things, and if you've identified something that it's a risk, it's how did you identify it was a risk? And then there's the whole measurement and the way you got to calculate it. It's using a discounted, the standard recommends you use a discounted cash flow method to determine how the liability is calculated. So even if you got a quote and they said it was going to be 100 grand today if you do the work, well, that doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be 100 grand in 10, 15 years whenever you start doing the actual reclamation work. So there's a bit to it. So
Thanks for the good news. Councillor Bates.
Yeah, not a question, more or less a statement, having processed what I just heard. I just can't imagine how we're going to do some of that, because if you take one of our buildings that's built 30 years ago, which we have some, it may have had updates. You've got a mechanical room over here, you've got a meeting room over there. Asbestos can be in drywall, it can, and I'm just looking at asbestos. I mean, there's a lot more than asbestos, I'm sure, in this scope.
yeah.
I'm not sure how you do that unless you go in and test everything, and the amount of that would be beyond imagination.
So a couple of things that I've seen so far. I've seen an organization done quite a bit of the reclamation work already historically. So they have approximate square footage measurements of property where it's approximately X amount of dollars based off of the amount of work that needs to be done. But keep in mind, there's different types of reclamation work, so not all costs are going to be equal. I know other organizations that are currently getting quotes to figure out what the reclamation work might cost today. A lot of people are dealing with engineers that have actually done with asbestos reclamation and getting information that way as well.
What I'm talking about is even the amount of places that you might have to test, say, in the arena.
Yeah.
You look at the size of an arena and think about stuff that's been fabricated and mechanical rooms and additions, and how many places do you test? You know, it can boggle the mind. Anyway, it's just a statement.
Yeah.
We're not going to solve that here. It just,
Yeah.
it can be huge.
Okay, well, I think that's all the questions, so thank you very much for coming, and continue on with your work with Director Vickers, and good luck with everything.
Thanks for your time, everybody.
Yeah, no,
Appreciate it.
Thank you. Thanks for the explanation. So we'll move on to 4.4 with CAO Becker.
Thanks, Mayor Barclay. So this report is a follow-up from some of the conversation I heard with council. I just took the liberty, and if I'm offside, just let me know. But what I heard of council, some conversations, is to look at a few of your more pertinent bylaws, more forward-facing bylaws, which are presented through, I described a couple, Code of Conduct bylaw, Council Procedure bylaw, and the CAO bylaw. Each, as you can see, have been updated over the last few years. Code of Conduct bylaw in 2021, procedure, it's okay. Council Procedure bylaw 2020, and CAO bylaw in 2022. Most of council would have seen Code of Conduct bylaw and Procedure bylaw within the committee orientations that was conducted prior to the festive season. Code of Conduct bylaw is attached for council review. I wasn't going to go through detail of that bylaw specifically. unless there's a question of council, but we'll just kind of work through this report and see where we'd like to go. The procedure bylaw was amended in 2020, right before the election, I believe. At that time, council made adjustments to the Agendas and Priorities Committee terms of reference, as well as the Community Services Standing Committee terms of reference. At that time, council allocated authority, responsibility to the Community Services Standing Committee to allocate the community grant dollars that the committee used to go as a recommendation to council. Council said, no, we trust you with this pot of money. You allocate it based on your review of the applications. Also, the terms of reference, the council also updated the bylaw to include notices of motion, which I'd like to just touch on briefly as we get into the bylaw. Council has had a few discussions too regarding public engagements, which kind of get a feel you'd like to have more conversations in the community. And just indicate there's 3 public engagements being coordinated for the first quarter. One is through council's directive to have a engagement at the Lundgren Center in February to go through the budget and projects. Council recently also gave a direction to host a public engagement, likely at the LLC, which is being planned to go again through more public for budget and projects and anything of interest from council and the public. Likely to occur in March. Administration's working on Energy Hub community conversations, which will come to you with some information likely in February. There's also a new budget policy which you approved, which also references the ability to engage citizen prior to the budget as part of the budget planning process. Again, administration will come to you to see what level of engagement you wish to have. I just want to highlight, we do have a public participation policy, which you have not seen, or you maybe just quickly, which will come back likely to the Director of Corporate Services, just to review what that policy looks like and how we engage at what level with public. Yeah, so just moving on. Also, I'd heard some references of council's interest to submit council agendas written reports. So the idea, I've seen this in other municipalities where they would write out a report on whether they attended a public engagement function or a committee. It's formalizing your communication. I'm just not sure if this is accurate or not, but seeing if that's of interest to you, council. And we'll get down to the template towards the end of this report that is there for your consideration. Just with all the references to communication, I just want to highlight to the communications department and their continued flexibility to accommodate the different sets, work plans, but also things that come at them kind of randomly, but which is totally understood and respected. But just the idea to having a communications plan or communications map, just to highlight, here's some of the areas that you can see throughout 2024. Here's my idea of what the communication plan or map looks like, and it may show some holes. Hey, we can do a little bit more communication based on capacity, but also based on expectations. We want to hear your expectations too. So just kind of give you a full picture of communications on the most part, and just helps staff plan a little bit too. But also we get to hear of what your expectations are regarding public communications. Again, it's not all inclusive, but it kind of frames it a little bit better than just often random, respectfully random requests for communications, which is totally appropriate too. So just going into the again, the bylaws, please council stop me if you want to go into any more detail. But again, I'm not going to go through the code of conduct bylaw. We've gone through this a few times through your committees, but it's there for your reference. And it was updated in 2021. And maybe there's areas you'd like to focus in on or something missing based on your perspective regarding how you council conduct your business on a conduct side of things. So just sliding through. That's the next one here. So just going into the procedure bylaw, I wouldn't mind just walking through the procedure bylaw a little bit. It's, you've seen this a little bit, but this is really how council conducts its business through the chambers, through your meetings, but also through your committees. This is the council procedure bylaw. So there's a list of different definitions for you. So this procedure bylaw applies to all council meetings, all your agendas and priorities meetings, as well as council committee meetings. That's why we shared this bylaw with your committees, because they are subject to this bylaw and how they conduct their procedures. What this bylaw states is that your meetings are held on this day and the second and fourth Mondays of each month at 3 o'clock. The organizational meeting, that's in the Municipal Government Act, but it's required at a certain time of year, which is in part of October. It goes through your quorum, how you conduct your business. Of course, you need 4 members to conduct your business. Part 6 outlines electronic recording devices, which electronic recording devices are allowed in the chambers, and as well as telephones, but placed on a certain tone, being silent. Adjournments is your business is conducted prior to 6 p.m., but you're allowed to go 6 p.m. based on your desire to go past 6 o'clock through a resolution of council. So the agendas that you see before you, it is set through this procedure, through this bylaw, and 1 through 13 is a list of your agenda. You have a right to adjust that agenda based on a motion. So when you say make a motion to adopt the agenda as amended, that's the direction that you permitted to adjust this agenda script as it's laid out. 8.3, and council, you have a ability to add items to the agenda in advance of the meeting. A little bit flexible based on where we're at with the agenda development, but it's come to the CAO office around 1 o'clock on the Wednesday prior to the meeting if you wish to have something placed on the agenda. Again, we're a little bit flexible based on where we're at on that development, but that's a target date for you or time for you to submit. Then the CAO through the executive assistants and SLT develop the rest of the agenda for you and gather as much information for you to consider. Then it's distributed with a deadline of 4 p.m. on the Friday. However, we have a target that we try for 4 o'clock on Thursday. So sometimes you get a Thursday, which is our desired time, but it's really Friday is the cutoff. So sooner you get it, the better. Then it's released publicly onto media, our website, etc. I won't go through the minutes, council. Delegations, part 10 goes through how public or anybody wishes to come before you, council, and that's through a submission to the CAO office through a delegation request form. What doesn't matter if it's contentious or what form, it's my job is to support public to get before you and help them be successful for their delegation. So we try to get as much information from the delegation request so you have a clue of what is coming before you. So open mic, which is part of your agenda, it's you'll see that's there. That's some parameters around open mic session on your council agendas. Of course, proceeding that meetings. I won't go through proceedings. Just some formalities for the mayor or who's holding the chair. Motions, that's your formal directions as part 13. Notices of motions, I just wanted to highlight this one. This came in through previous council. Council has not exercised this procedure. And it is a benefit to you, council, to follow the bylaw, one, but also there's the importance of notices of motion is it allows council to understand something's coming in a notice of motion at the next meeting, but also informs administration that council has an interest in this specific topic. We can start framing up our support to you with information perhaps, but also informs the public that hey, there's something of pertinent information we'd like to come to and put on the agenda instead of just adding onto the agenda. Sometimes council, you have items that need to be, you feel should be addressed immediately, And that's really through a council resolution to permit that item to be added to the agenda without a notices of motion. So again, just if we want to stop there to go through that, but I strongly recommend to you, council, to exercise 1312 of the procedure bylaw, notices of motion. We did develop a template form too to help you frame up your notices of motion. Again, it's my job is to help you if you require any support in the development of a notice of motion. Conduct in council meetings, it's very similar to your code of conduct bylaw. In camera, which means non-public, is related to the Freedom of Information Privacy Act. So there's a list of items that you can go non-public to discuss non-public information, and you, council, will follow that one to the T, and conduct your business in public. And committee proceedings, it's there, but I just want to spend a little bit of time just to, how did we get to do this business? It's just kind of review, and this is the structure and how you do your business is based on your procedure bylaw. And I won't go through the terms of reference. They're there to be reviewed and updated accordingly. CAO bylaw, you did have a peek at this through the CAO evaluation. Certainly stop if there's any questions. I'm not trying to avoid going through this one, but if you want to stop and go through, I can certainly go through it. But my plan is just to move on to the very last item, and that's a report. And again, it's more work for council, but there was some demonstration of submitting information through a more formal format. And here's just an idea for your consideration to just populate this report. And what it does is helpful from administrative perspective to hear a little bit more from your committees, and is brought up at SLT that more information we can hear back, because sometimes we hear from committees, especially the external ones, and we don't quite have the full picture, but I'll leave it for your consideration. That's my report.
Okay, thank you, CEO Becker. So maybe we'll address the template first. Would council, I know I think we talked about this during our strategic planning and maybe budget, but would we like to begin in the new year here about having a more formal report for our committees and having it in writing, just the highlights of your committee meetings for the week? And Councillor Heistad?
Yeah, I recall this conversation a while back with all of us, and I think it's a good idea. My question would be to our council would be, are we looking at every meeting or at the end of the month, or are we providing that structure just depending on when those meetings may be? Like sometimes it's, like we do our timesheet at the end of the month, close to the end of the month. Is it easier to get everything in so it's a full overview of what we've done, or are we looking at every week?
I believe every week, Councillor Heistad, or at least every regular council meeting. So it's really the same as the roundtable report. So this would be given in roundtable, but it's something that is in writing. And I'm just not sure whether it be submitted by Wednesdays the week before, or do we have it and then give it to Juanita after the meeting to have it in the minutes for the next week? Like, because we may have meetings on Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, right, after the cutoff, and so I'm not sure if CEO Becker, you've seen this before, so.
Yeah. Mayor Barclay, I think it's a good point. I think really for you to submit following, because there's a lot of action between the Wednesday and the Monday. So I think that'd be outlined in the procedure bylaw. We'd have a section based on this. But I think if you can submit it, great. If not, it could be a handout attached to the agenda for public record at the Monday meeting.
Yeah, I think it also helps to, you want to go back and remember something, and now you have something concrete to go back and look at. And so, any other comments? Councillor Messaros?
Thank you, Mayor Barclay. Yeah, that was one of the things I was thinking of also, was the timeline. I know we had talked about having something submitted the Wednesday before the next meeting, which is awkward. So I'm glad that that's come up for discussion.
Councillor Bates?
I think my preference on that would be to bring my report at the start to this meeting for what happened last week. And then report it and hand it in.
Okay,
Just, otherwise to try and hit another deadline in the middle of last week, that could be real
yeah, I agree.
difficult.
And would you like to do it every week or just for regular council meetings? I mean, we do it every week now, really. Councillor Dunham?
Thank you, Mayor Barclay. I'd like to see every week personally. I'd like to see the same procedure that we've been doing.
Sure.
And we just bring it to council, then turn over the written to Juanita, and we go from there.
Sounds good. Did you want a motion, CO Becker, for this, or will you just carry on and bring it back to us, or?
I think, Mayor Barclay, you have two options. If you want to start immediately, I think a motion, Lisa gives some direction, or else alternatively, I'd bring back and update your procedure bylaw. So if you want to start right away, I'd say make a motion to,
Okay.
you'd
Well,
start
then
right away.
let's have somebody make a motion then, that Councillor Harrison.
I'd so move that we start immediately, and the reason being is I have some, what I believe are very important meetings coming up on water with the RD Mug group next week, so, and there's a number of questions that I'll certainly have of not RD Mug, but also of the Water Commission and where we're headed, because that's been pretty much in the news the last week or so, so I think it's coming to a head, so I would recommend that, or my motion would read that we start immediately, effective immediately after this meeting. Thank you.
I think that's totally appropriate. I just think in my head some wording for clarity would be for council to, sorry, I'm gonna go back.
CO Becker, do you want me to come back with a notice of motion next week? Or?
Can't do it next
That'd be
week,
great,
sir.
but how about Councillor Harrison for council to provide written updates of participation in council activities, effective immediately, and direct administration to bring back amendments to the procedure bylaw.
Thank you very much, CO
Sounds
Becker.
perfect. Okay.
Pardon?
Sounds perfect.
Perfect, yeah.
Okay. Councillor Bates?
So are we going to get some of these templates? Because I have 2 meetings this week.
It will be sent to you, yep. It's ready to go. Okay, so there's a motion, all in favor? Okay, carried. And then I guess going back through the other parts, we've spoke before about adding something around social media into, I guess, our code of conduct, I guess, and I'm not sure what that looks like or sounds like, but I'm sure there's lots of municipalities that have that, so I think that's wise for some protection for everybody. And would you like a motion for that too, CO Becker, or would you just do some research on that and bring it back to us another time? And
Mayor Barclay, are you able to provide some context, and then it'll lead into a motion to give us direction to?
yeah, I just think, like, there's nothing in code of conduct that refers to social media. And, you know, there's obviously been some issues in municipalities with elected officials using social media and how it's used. And so I just want to make sure that it's in our code of conduct, and so we know where we're at and kind of what the parameters are around that. We attended, I believe Councillor Wing and Heistad and I were at a code of conduct breakout session at Alberta Munis, and she talked quite extensively about social media, of course, because that's where it's at nowadays. and so I will make a motion that we direct administration to undertake research into adding a social media component to our code of conduct policy bylaw. Sorry. Councillor Heistad.
Your worship. That was when we did that training or that info session at, I think it was 5 months ago now. I thought the session was really good. I think with the framework of, with this motion, and there's an opportunity for us, not only as councillors to refresh on it, but to spend some time on the discussion on social media and as well as how we conduct ourselves. I see that's is very important because there's so much of it out there, and I think it's best when we have a new motion coming forward is that we're clear as a team, and that's where I'm coming from. But thanks.
Yeah, I mean, my mind even goes to, should everybody have a social media Facebook page, for example, that's councillor instead of personal, where you're not mixing and mingling the two together and, you know, keeping that clarity. And I don't know whether that would be normal for other municipalities or whatever, but just some things like that, so. Okay, so we have a motion to have administration bring back some information on this. All in favor? Okay, carried. And is there anything else in either the procedural or code of conduct that we want to bring up? No? Doesn't look like it.
No, I was, Your Worship, sorry, jumping in there before you. My only comment would be is adding an additional item during the meeting. I think the big thing for us, and the odd time that does happen where we add the item, and I don't want us to be too cumbersome where we're making sure that there's the procedure does not allow us to do that at meetings. So I know that we didn't get into those discussions, and I know I can be guilty of it at times, CO Becker, bringing up agenda items last minute, but I don't. How I see our governance structure at this table is making sure that we have that availability. So,
CO Becker.
Mayor Barclay, like Councillor Heistad, I think those are really good comments, and I think what it does is kind of puts it back to you to have the conversation. Council could, notice a motion, or I'd like to add this to the agenda, but it puts power onto council saying, you know what, I'd like to see it or hear a little bit more. This should be a notice of motion, or no, this is really a pertinent topic for today. We should talk about this, but it powers you to make a motion to adopt that agenda. But council has a right to say, I need more detail. I think we should do a notice of motion, but you have that conversation, not driven by me, it's driven by you.
Yeah, I think what it does, at times, it would allow better discussion on the topic matter if you have a heads up that it's coming, as opposed to just, other times, absolutely, it's more appropriate. So, Councillor Wing?
Yeah, Mayor Barclay would agree that I would really like to see us move towards that notice of motion process, because the other piece that's missing when all of a sudden something gets thrown onto the agenda is our community is not aware that the agenda's been amended either. And so it could be at the beginning of the meeting, or it can even come up in the roundtable discussion where all of a sudden there's more information coming out that we haven't really informed people about before we've made a decision perhaps. So, and I appreciate that stuff happens. Sometimes things happen at the last minute that we need to deal with, but if we could move into that notice of motion, I think it gives all of us a little bit more time to think things through, think about what the process will be, and then sort of move from there. So I would really encourage that action to be more adopted.
I also think it gives administration time to prepare too. So there's
Totally,
questions
totally,
that come up
thank you.
or
Yes.
information and they're not prepared. So, yeah, okay, sounds good. Councillor Bates.
Yeah, I just want to agree with that direction, that I think it's incumbent on us to ask, if we're going to bring something up, to ask ourselves, do we really have to do it today, or is it something that we should get prepared for more?
Okay, thank you. So if I could just have someone then, please, if there's no further discussion, please make a motion that that council receives this report as information. Councillor Wing.
Yes, Mayor Barclay, I would make the motion that council receives a report for information.
Okay, thank you. All in favor? All right, carried. And we will move on to 5.1 with Director Jenkins.
Thank you, Mayor Barclay. So looking for council approval today of the 2024 Housing Action Plan that has been created coming out of the 2023 Housing Assessment with the intent to guide housing-related efforts over the next 2 years. The plan is based, again, on the recommendations from that assessment, identifying a large unmet housing demand within the community. The report highlights some development areas that represent short-term opportunities to stimulate dwelling unit creation, including policies and actions for the recondition and removal of vacant or derelict properties, the promotion of infill development, as well as partnerships with individual developers or housing agencies. So the actions target the creation of both market and non-market housing through both direct action as well as indirect action through policies and partnerships. So we'll just kind of walk through the actual table of actions that have been identified. So under the market actions, the promotion, or to promote or require the demolition or rehabilitation of vacant or derelict properties. So these are we already have some ongoing actions with respect to specific properties that will be sort of addressed ongoing through administration work plans, as well as opportunities within the tax policy review that's slated to take place in 2024 in terms of either disincentivizing sort of those vacant properties being left in that state. The direct facilitation to guide small developers through redevelopment processes for infill sites. So this is something along with our infill incentive program, which provides financial incentive for the redevelopment of properties. With our current resources in-house, we are able to, I guess, sort of provide more of a hands-on approach with developers approaching some of our infill sites in terms of helping them navigate bylaw requirements, supporting them in that design process. And that's something we've already sort of undertaken in the last few months. The MDP update, council's aware that this is an ongoing process, hoping to have that sort of by the end of 2024, early 25. Again, the MDP being that sort of longer-term policy direction, sort of higher level policies surrounding not only housing, but sort of development across the community. Looking for a review of land use bylaw within this year as well. I believe 2019 was the last time we did sort of a more comprehensive look through the land use bylaw. So a variety of different target areas that can be reviewed and discussed and ensure we're staying current and reasonable within our land use bylaw. Looking at the downtown area redevelopment plan. So again, this was a statutory document originally adopted in 2010. Hasn't had a lot of changes since that time. Again, with some of our sort of added internal capacity with our planning intern, that's something that we hope that we can get started on maybe later in this year into 2025. Continued dialogue with larger land developers in the community. So again, this is sort of day-to-day things that we do anyways within the department, but continuing to keep those lines of communication open with our larger developers, ensuring that we're responding to any questions or plans that they come forward with. Education and awareness of cooperative model for housing creation. So this is kind of a CED ECDEV action that is potentially has some impact in the housing space as well. We're targeting March to have a community education event respecting sort of cooperatives and the cooperative business model. Not so much in Alberta, but in many other provinces. Housing, particularly seniors housing, a lot is achieved through community-based cooperative organizations. Construction within Napoleon Meadows. So this, we currently have an RFP issued for construction of 3 to 4 units within Napoleon Meadows on the town-owned properties. So we'll be coming back to council, likely the next regular council meeting in January with the results of that RFP process to move forward with that construction. Complete detailed design and engineering for the Southwest development. So again, the property across from Field and Forge. We'll be looking to have sort of initial conversations with council on concepts, probably later in January, the first part of February. Mixed use downtown redevelopment support. So working with property owners, again, sort of that support through any redevelopment process, how administration can support design and development to ensure that if we do see redevelopment, that it's the quality of development we want to see. Tax policy may be involved in that too, if you're looking at your downtown area differently than other parts of the community. And then land banking for strategic, for future development. So that's sort of an ongoing conversation with council, ensuring that we're being aware of properties that would be influential or key to the long-term development pattern of the community. So then within the non-market space, these tend to be more sort of collaborative and partnership building types of actions. So improving our relationship, not improving, but expanding our relationship with Red Deer Housing Authority to ensure we have an understanding of the demand that exists for the existing subsidized units that we have in the community, what the wait lists look like, what kind of requests are they seeing, and how the municipality can work within that space to influence or look at how additional units even end up being created through that system. Collaborate with Parkland Foundation. So we've had some conversations with council. I know there's been more conversation with that committee about sort of further development at Autumn Grove and then longer term. So what role can we play in supporting that and understanding their works? Looking at rental policies. So again, through things like the tax policy and the land use bylaw review, looking at whether we want to incentivize policies that would result in more rental-based or rental types of development. So whether you have different standards based on assurances from a developer as to the type of housing they're providing. Again, then looking at different partnerships, whether that be with private housing development companies, things like Habitat for Humanity, as well as looking around central Alberta and creating some connections with some of the existing private seniors developers that are operating in other communities, what they're looking for when they're going into those communities, and why they may or may not be in this space. I guess any questions from council? In terms of format of this document, we kind of had discussions and considerations of whether it, this could have been a 40-page document, but we went with 2. Hopefully that will make it less sort of onerous to update and monitor and to revisit over time, that it's not difficult to come back and run through this list and see where we're at with different things. And in 2 years when we need to update. So we're, and hopefully it's something that's digestible and the public will be more inclined to take a look through.
Okay, thank you, Director Jenkins, and thank you for the 2 versus 40. So a couple of questions. I guess I'm, as always, interested in, Parkland and what's going on there. And I know we spoke about maybe having Bethany come in and do a presentation to council, but wondering if that could be put on the schedule going forward, if that suits, if you feel that would be of interest and beneficial to us.
I think that certainly would, and I think that's one of the committees too, that council sits at that table, but administration doesn't necessarily always get in the loop or have a solid understanding there, so that would be good.
And do you need a motion for that, or will you just carry on and do that?
Why not a motion, just for
Why
the
not?
books? Yeah, please.
Okay. I will move that we direct administration to invite Bethany Group to come and do a presentation to council at a future date. Okay, all in favor? Okay, thank you, CO Becker. Also with the downtown development, Director Jenkins, I'm wondering also with, you know, land use reviews, if that area should be reviewed to, I know we spoke about it last term, and I think maybe did some adjustments, but, you know, we had this vision with 13 ways and everything, and, you know, move people downtown, and, you know, the experiential opportunities with shopping and all sorts of things, but, you know, you need those businesses in the downtown core, right, to be able to bring that to fruition, and where the permissible business in that area is quite broad at the moment. So I'm wondering if that would be something that would be reviewed going forward, and we try to tie that land use into what the actual vision is.
And that would be, so a combination with that downtown ARP, I think that's
Okay.
the primary sort of policy tool we have to talk about what the vision is,
Sure.
what types of businesses, what types of buildings are conducive to that. That would really try to direct that
Okay.
through that process.
Perfect, thank you.
And yeah, again, hopefully making use of some of our additional internal planning resources that we have right now.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Bates?
I am, Your Worship. I guess what I'm wondering, when I look at the phrase of the housing dialogue with the larger land developers, do you think it would be appropriate for us to put a marker like, say, the third quarter and say, let's invite them at some point if they haven't had a dialogue with administration? Let's actually invite them to make a dialogue, create a dialogue with us. There's only, at this point in time, 3 of them
Go ahead.
that I'm aware of, unless something else is in the works.
Mayor Barclay to Councillor Bates. Administration has ongoing conversations with
Right.
those associated with Innisfil. If council wishes to have an engagement, that's a different engagement, but we have continual conversations with them.
Well, maybe we put a marker on our own calendar and say if that we get an update from you, let's say by a period, some period on the calendar, and then if there isn't anything to update, maybe we invite them. That's just some thoughts I have.
Councillor Heistad?
Yeah, I'm curious, Councillor Bates, is that a motion that you're proposing?
I'm sure the CAO could wordsmith that into a motion that yeah, so it would be that I would look for an update from administration. I move that we get an update from administration outlining the specific larger land developers, say halfway through the year, at the end of the second quarter, and then we could decide from there if we want to do something further vis-a-vis an invitation or whatever. But just get an update as to what's going on in 2024 at the end of the second quarter.
Did you want to specifically name the larger?
Well, maybe not, because we might end up with a new one, who knows? Or somebody might buy somebody, or I think we all know who they are.
Yeah, just don't forget Dodds Lake. Okay. Councillor Harrison?
Thank you, Mayor Barclay. Just a question through to Director Jenkins. Have we had discussions with our developing group and developers around manufactured housing? You know, I take a drive through the other communities, and there's some pretty nice houses out there now that come on the back of a truck, and they're put in with cranes, and they're on slabs. Has there been any thought about, and I look at our zoning map here, and I really don't see a whole bunch of opportunity for strictly manufactured housing. So my question would be, have we had those discussions, and maybe it falls in with Councillor Bates's idea in the fall there to have that dialogue around, because we hear all the time, or I hear all the time, oh, I just want a single car garage, I want it affordable, and I want it on slab, and I don't want any stairs. So maybe there's an opportunity here for, on piles or something, I don't know, but as long as you've thought about it, thank you.
Yeah, so certainly, we haven't, of sort of our larger developers, I haven't had them come forward with that inquiry. But as much as the zoning map has specific areas to manufactured homes, our R1B and R1C, which is essentially the vast majority of the community, manufactured homes are an option. The land use bylaw includes sort of design requirements that go along with that in terms of what that product can be, but a manufactured or a prefabricated home could be placed on the vast majority of the lots in the community.
So supplementary then, would it be appropriate to, when we have these discussions with the developers, to plant that seed about, have you thought about manufactured homes? Because I think, like I say, I've driven through many other communities and you see these developments, and there's some pretty spunky homes out there now that, they're not the 14 by 68 anymore, like they're actually homes.
Yep.
And they look very, very nice. And to me, it's sort of what maybe our constituents are looking for, or some of our population. So just a thought, Director Jenkins. Thank you.
Okay. Casio Becker.
Are we going to vote on that
Yeah.
motion,
Yeah.
or?
I thought he wanted to say something first, so. Okay, so we have a motion to bring back some information on big developers. All in favor? Okay, carried. And then we'll have a motion that council approves the 2024 housing actions as presented. Councillor Messaros?
I'll make that motion, Mayor Barclay.
Okay, thank you. Any more questions? Okay, all in favor? Okay, carried. And we'll go into correspondence. So we kind of went over the LGFF, and I guess we'll get more on that going forward. The building resiliency to multi-year drought that's for January 26, is that something that we should be attending by the looks of it? And is administration, members of administration attending?
Mayor Barclay, we have not discussed.
Okay.
We'll go through
Yeah.
the
Okay.
agenda tomorrow morning
Sure.
and see if
Okay.
he's available.
Okay, so I think if any of us would like to go, let Juanita go and she can look after that for us. We've got solar farm update. And I guess number 4, the building resiliency to the multi-year drought, as Councillor Harrison said, lots in the news about this lately. Is there any kind of an update from administration on kind of an overview of this, or where does Innisfail go in the future with this and the involvement in building out some kind of a plan?
My perspective, Mayor Barclay, is for administration to move into discussion as early as tomorrow. We review your agenda meeting in the morning. This is one area that we're hearing more through media, about the current condition of drought and expected drought. Multi-year drought, as that document states, so that'll be a question we'll have internally. What's our role, expectation, bring it back to you and make sure your the expectations are aligning. But just right now would be an educational stage, I'd say right now, but we need to have a strong understanding of what is occurring, make sure if we have any mitigation ideas, that'll be probably the next stages.
Okay, thank you. Also, big congratulations to Innisfail for the age-friendly designation. So to Manager Mackenzie and Sandy and the age-friendly community, work's been going on for several years now, so it's nice to see that finally come to fruition. And And we have another drought letter from the Minister of the Environment. The assessment model review letter from the Minister of Municipal Affairs doesn't really pertain to us, I don't believe. Does anybody have anything they want to add? CEO Becker?
Yeah, Mayor Barclay, the number 6 item was follow-up from the director in relation to the question that was posed. I'm not sure, I just wanted to highlight that, that
Yeah,
was a
no,
follow-up.
I saw it, so
Okay.
kind of no answer because they're really not,
Okay.
yeah. Or they, yeah. I mean, an answer, but maybe not the one I was looking for. How's that? Any questions about the correspondence? No? Okay, can I please have someone make a motion then? We accept the correspondence as information. Councillor Heistad.
I'll make that motion.
Thank you. All in favor? Okay, carried. Then we'll get into our council reports, beginning with Councillor Wing today.
Thank you, Mayor Barclay. Happy New Year to everybody. We enjoyed a quiet holiday season, but kicked off the new year with the Fire and RCMP hockey game on Friday night. It was a great event. Lovely to see as many members of the community out, and also 2 really big hockey teams. I was impressed with how many players they had. I missed the 50-50 by 1 number, so I'm not sure if I'll go back next year, but well, anyways, it was a really good evening. I attended Michael Dawes' funeral last Thursday, and I will be attending Frank Wong's funeral tomorrow. Certainly, as the mayor had indicated earlier, Red Deer and Red Deer City Council benefited over many years from the commitment of both of those fine gentlemen, and they are missed. I had the opportunity to sit with both of them on various Western Park committees, as well as City of Red Deer and Red Deer College committees. So Michael Dawes' funeral was quite an amazing event. So that's me for this week. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. And Councillor Bates?
So actually, just before Christmas on December 22nd, the Mountain View Water Commission did have a special meeting, and it was in relation to the letter that was in our correspondence from Rebecca Schultz. And in the spirit of compliance and our credibility moving forward, they came up with the resolution that's also in our correspondence about bulk water sales. A lot of the members have control and actual municipal bulk water sales, which we don't have. And anyway, so that resolution was passed, and I did, I believe, send an email at least to council. Yeah. I had Christmas and New Year's with family, and one thing I'm catching up to right now is some of my town emails. They're all done now. For some reason, when 2024 ticked over, my phone quit notifying me that I had emails pending, so I discovered I had a whole bunch of them last week. Yeah, I went to the Battle of the Blades. It was extremely well done, and pretty balanced teams, obviously, with the outcome going into overtime, and looked like a certain member of the SLT had ensured that it wouldn't go to overtime, and yeah, 5 seconds left and tied up. This week I do have a Water Commission meeting on Wednesday, and Councillor Harrison, if there's anything specific you want me to ask at that meeting, I'd like to know, because we have those meetings monthly, and I have a police and safe community on Thursday. That's it.
Okay, thank you. And Councillor Harrison?
Thank you, Mayor Barclay, and through to council and our constituents. I had a very relaxing 10 days or 15, whatever it was. I didn't do anything. I just put my feet up and nada. I enjoyed friends and family, and looking forward to the 2024 season coming up. And I guess further to Councillor Bates's question, I would like to ask, is there a communication plan coming out from the Water Commission with some ideas on how we can work together on the partnership? I know we have our water rationing bylaw and everything, but is there anything bigger that the commission has thought about? And I'll just leave that with you. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Heistad.
Thanks, Mayor Barclay. Previous week, I attended the Innisfail Historical Village meeting, and during that meeting, there was discussion. January 20th is the Snow and Tumbleweeds event, which will be taking place again. at the village, which has been, I think this is the third year, if I'm right on this. It's a great event. Battle of the Blades was excellent. I was cheering for the fire team. I think there was an extra 1.5 or 1.4 seconds added to that clock, so which I call BS on that, but they won. The good guys won. And Thursday, I have the privilege to be at a policing committee meeting with Councillor Bates. That's it.
Are you going to say the good guys won at the policing committee?
Definitely.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Dunham.
Thank you, Mayor Barclay, and Happy New Year to everyone. I attended the Battle of the Badges as well. It was wonderful to see, second year in a row. That's it for me. Had a fairly busy Christmas season going all over Hell's Half Acre, as the saying goes, but it was really good to catch up with family and friends and look forward to 2024 with all of you.
Perfect, thank you. And Councillor Messaros.
Thank you, Mayor Barclay. I also attended the Battle of the Badges this year. I wasn't able to last year. It was pretty exciting, and I just wanted to thank Sergeant Imey and the RCMP for inviting me to be part of the puck drop as my role as deputy mayor right now. So that was kind of exciting. There's some work happening with the chamber right now. I think this week, we've got a meeting this week, and we should have the new executive director job description finalized and ready to be put out. And I know that they want to come to the town and ask, maybe they already have, about another partnership with the Innisfil Energy Hub for the trade show. So that's it.
Okay, thank you. So going back into December 20th, we had the Central Alberta Mayor's Group at the Innisfil Golf Course. We had a guest speaker from Central Alberta Women's Shelter, Dr. Danica Hoffert. She's executive director. Just share some of the data that she shared with us. So they had 3,054 crisis calls in 2023. 1,414 women and 244 children were helped, but there was also over 1,000 turned away due to lack of space. The maximum stay in the shelter is 28 days, which of course adds a lot of complexities to the situation, as the women are mostly now needing to find a place to live, which we know how difficult that is. So lives are really turned upside down. Apex Counseling has 25 women on a wait list, and the wait list is approximately 18 months in duration. The abuser is also on a wait list, but their wait list is only 3 weeks. So typically, people who finally get to the shelter, they go through 80 incidents before they will actually leave the home. And on average, it takes 12 times of leaving before the leave is permanent. The abuse that they endure includes brain injuries, strangulations, and rape, just to name a few. Central Alberta Women's Shelter has been awarded the largest CMHC grant in Canada. It's $30 million, and there's a fundraising expectation of $2 million by them within the community. There'll be a 40 to 50 bed emergency facility going forward, and then 15 1- and 2-bedroom spaces available, and that will help people stay for a longer period of time and be a better environment for the families. There's been no new provincial funding since 2015. That evening, we were asked to bring a $20 donation for a food bank, and whatever municipality was picked out of the hat, they could take that money and donate it to their own food bank. Mayor Tim Wilson from Delburn had his name picked, but he chose to give that money to the women's shelter instead. We also went around the room asking if people wanted to make additional donations. So that evening, we raised almost $1,000 for the Central Alberta Women's Shelter. Anyway, it was excellent presentation. I don't know if we're interested sometime, maybe we could have Dr. Hoffert come and do a presentation to us. It reminded me so much of the Child Advocacy Center presentation that we had a few months ago. Then I had a Cape Board meeting on December the 21st. The meeting was about 5 hours, but we wanted to ensure that we moved into 2024 on a very positive note. We will be convening 4 committees. Transportation and logistics is one. The second is tourism. The third is agribusiness, and the fourth will be a combination of emerging technology, manufacturing, and natural resources. Due to the vast region that we serve and the diversity within the membership, we decided to launch these committees and and we will be seeking our member municipalities to participate. So right now, of course, if you're not on the board, you're kind of not really engaged with CAPE, and we want to find a way to engage everyone in CAPE, whether you're on the board or not. Another area of focus is going to be continue to build relationships not only with municipalities, but also with economic development teams, Chamber of Commerce organizations, provincial, federal government, and so on. We're also reviewing our web design and marketing to ensure it is reflective of expectations and delivering value to our members. And then was it Connecting Dots Foundation, the Community Hamper Giveaway. I know Councillor Messaros and Heistad were also there on December 23rd. January 25th, of course, attended the Battle of the Badges. Thank you to all that were involved in making that such a wonderful and entertaining evening. And looking forward to the rematch next year. And I'd also like to say thank you to Deputy Messaros, who was covering for me while I had some vacation time over the holidays. So that's all I have to report. And we will move into open mic session. Does anybody, we have some people in the gallery, welcome, coming here today. So did you have anything you wanted to say, or no? Okay, all right. Well, thanks for coming. Okay, and we go into upcoming events. I'll just have somebody make a motion to accept this as information. Sorry, I was.
Mayor Barclay, I'd make that motion.
Yeah, thank you.
I'd like to add the Water Commission on the 10th,
Okay,
every second Wednesday of the month.
okay. Everybody in favor? Carried. Then we'll have a motion to go in camera, please.
Mayor Barclay,
Councillor
I'll
Wing.
make that motion.
Okay, thank you. All in favor? Okay, thank you. And we'll just take maybe a 5-minute break.